Hello and welcome to another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. I'm Dave G, and joining me right now is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I'm Kyle.
And tonight we're taking a look at one of the fresh films that's in cinemas right now. We're taking a look at Mortal Kombat. Yes, that's right. The world-famous video game is back with another big screen adaptation, this time coming from first-time director Simon McQuoid, and of course James Wan is the producer of this. He's been wanting to make a Mortal Kombat movie for a long time, and this is the result. Now, the film itself centers around a young MMA fighter called Cole Young, played by Louis Tan, and he suddenly finds himself mixed up in this kind of otherworldly warfare that's going on between the different dimensions after he runs into somebody called Jax, played by Mikad Brooks, who then tells him to go along and talk to Sonya Blade, played by Jessica McNamee. And it's from there where this film starts to get a little bit weird, I guess is the best way to put it. So, mate, I know you're a huge gamer. I'm not so much a gamer, but you are. So tell us a little bit about what you thought about this Mortal Kombat movie, and does it add up to the actual game itself?
Well, to be honest, with games, I'm actually more of a fan of the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie than I am maybe the game franchise itself. With fighting games in general, like with the Mortal Kombat games, I enjoy just playing them with friends a little bit, but I've never really been that invested in the lore and stuff like that. But the 95 movie was huge for me. It was like my favorite movie at the time when it came out, like one of the first movies I owned on VHS, and the soundtrack was the first album I ever bought. And the sequel was the first movie that I could ever tell was just a shit movie. Not because I was too young or just didn't get it. It was the first time I could tell, this is just a bad movie. But I was interested in this new film, and being, at the time, I thought it was going to be directed by James Wan, when in the end he just stayed on as a producer. And it was supposed to be it was a largely Australian production, and having a hard R rating, which promised like gore and violence that the 1995 movie kind of missed out on. Sadly, as simple as the story is, and like as stupid as the movie is that we're kind of expecting, it's a Mortal Kombat movie. You're not really expecting much. I still think that this film, I think it kind of failed to deliver where it mattered. Like the characters, with a few exceptions, are really boring. The fight scenes, I didn't think they were really shot or edited that well in a way, and I think that while they made some interesting decisions in how to adapt the story from the games onto the big screen and to do it in a way that was different from the 1995 movie, I still think they made a lot of decisions that, a lot of choices that didn't really fit with it being a Mortal Kombat film. But what did you think of it, David?
Yeah, look, I got really excited with that first 10 minutes of the film. When I was watching that, which kind of centers around the character of Hanzo, which is played by Hiroyuki Sanada, it had a real Asian feel to it, and I thought, wow, they've finally made a film based on a video game that I'm going to really enjoy. It felt like it was going to go into that kind of Last Samurai style of filmmaking, and I thought I was about to experience like kind of an epic ninja film, and I was like, wow, this is going to be absolutely fantastic. And then I know this is so harsh, but it felt as soon as they introduced the character of Cole, the film fell away. And like the more and more that I've kind of analyzed it after I've walked out of this movie, I've realized that I think the film should actually have been told through the eyes of Sonya Blade, solely because I think she's one of the more interesting characters, and you don't really need the character of Cole in there. Like, it's interesting that he's the only character that was created for the film that's not in the games, because it really felt like, and the really weird thing is, it would have really pleased Hollywood if this film had come from Sonya's point of view, because it would have been like a female-led action film. So I'm kind of surprised that they didn't go with that route, to be absolutely honest. But you could have gone through her eyes, because she doesn't have the mark. Like, I hope that's not spoiling anything for anybody out there. But like, she could have been around Jax and trying to find out what this is about, because Jax does have the mark. You could have had the character of Kano come into it because of the fact that they're trying to find other people with the mark. It would have been absolutely brilliant. That's a perfect storyline that they could have gone with it coming through Sonya's eyes. They didn't need Cole, and they didn't need his family. To me, that kind of almost took it into that the terms that we got with not Kong versus Godzilla, but the Godzilla film before that, where it was so heavily laden with characters that it kind of interrupted the flow of the story. I thought that was the same here, and yeah, once they introduced Cole as a character, the film seemed to lapse, and then it ended up, I described it in my written review as, it ended up becoming like a DC movie. Like, it was everything that I didn't like about Justice League before we saw the Snyder Cut. It just felt like, hey, now you're in this world and we're going to fight, kind of thing. So many characters coming in, but it felt like there was a great movie underneath it that could have been revealed if they just stuck to what they did with that first 10 minutes.
Yeah, like, what did you think of Kano, the character of Kano, and how he was played?
I kind of liked that, because even though, like, I know that around the world they're going to try and hide this fact, but it pretty much is an Australian film. It's an Australian producer, an Australian director, shot in Australia, with some
Australian actors.
Yeah, some Australian leads in there. So I think I kind of like the fact that they did make him an ochre kind of Australian. But the only thing I did find was, and I really feel for Josh Lawson, because I thought Josh Lawson did a great job making that character kind of like the comic relief, but with also a serious side. I kept on, because I knew that Joel Edgerton was originally cast in that part, it felt at times like Josh Lawson was playing Joel Edgerton. And that's really unfair to Josh Lawson, because I felt, did do a great job, and I felt he was one of the more interesting characters in it. So, yeah, I didn't mind the fact that Kano was really, really Australian, because I thought that kind of was a tribute to the fact of where the film's heritage came from.
Well, because, like, Kano was Australian in the '95 version as well, and as far as I know, he's been Australian for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was definitely, as far as the characters go, for me, he was definitely the highlight, the character of the entire roster. Like he got on my nerves a little in the comedy relief kind of thing. But like that said, he for me, he was really the only character he really stuck out. And it's not just because like he was so amazing in the role. He was good in the role. He really did stand out the way he should in this kind of a movie. But everybody else, I felt, was a lot more boring. Like, every other character just kind of blended into the background. And I agree 100% with you. Especially the biggest problem was the Cole Young character. It was disastrous in the movie because the entire film is really based around him.
Yeah.
Like, as you say, he's an original character, and like in the fandom would talk about him, would consider him an OC, and like his introduction to the Mortal Kombat world and what's going on is the way that the audience is introduced to it, and is the way that we are introduced to it. But exactly like you say, man, they could have done that with so many other characters. The Sonya Blade story that you said, that would have been a great idea. That's something that's it's totally different than what was done in the 95 movie, and it's something that they can keep the characters that people are expecting to be there, and to actually just to approach the movie in a different way without needing to create an original character. Like, what I compared it to, what I can only compare it to is, it's like when making the Avengers, rather than having the movie focus equally on Iron Man and Captain America and Thor and the others, it instead introduced a new superhero from scratch that nobody's ever heard of, and all of the big name characters acted in a supporting role to this character. And like, what that means is that whenever the movie has any major moments where the good and bad characters are facing off against each other, it needs to keep reminding you that this random guy that nobody really cares about is actually the main character. And he's such a boring character. There's nothing interesting about him because he's just like this bland MMA fighter.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to hate too much on the actor and all, but he wasn't even performed that well. I'm not sure how much of that is because of the script or him not really being that professional of an actor, but it's a pity because it's a ensemble movie, and so much of the film is based around this one character and his family and what's going on with that it really just it doomed the movie from the start. Apparently that was something that the studio or producers or something, they were insistent that there had to be this original character in the movie. It apparently wasn't something that the screenwriters actually had any say in, or at least they've come out saying, hey, that thing that everybody hates, we had nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
so, I don't know why it was so important to them to have this original character in the movie, but for an ensemble film like this, it really does suffer because of it.
Yeah, and like I said, I felt that there was too many characters. It felt like like I said, the things that I didn't like in the original Justice League movie, like even with some of the hero characters, like in the other realm, it was like, hey, here's Liu and here's Kang, and they're just there, like, you don't need to know anything about them. And it's like, yeah, I do want to know something about them. And it was the same with like with the villains. When the villains started to show up, it was just like, hey, this is the really bad guy, and here's all of his henchmen. But there was no there was no setup for those characters. Like last night, I actually watched Thunder Force, the new Melissa McCarthy superhero movie, and there was better development for the villains in that than what there was in Mortal Kombat. Like, Jimmy Cannavale plays this villain called the King, and you know instantly what his character is like. Like, you get a feel for his character, you know he's a douche, you know he comes from a rich background, and like then there's even a character that like Jason Bateman plays that's like a part crab, part human bad guy, and it's like when a really ridiculous comedy superhero movie has better villains than a Mortal Kombat movie that is supposed to be serious, you know there's something seriously wrong with the screenplay when that's the case.
Yeah, like the characters, and as you say, the way that they were introduced, and it's just like, oh, okay, this character's here now. That was pretty much when I saw Mortal Kombat Annihilation, the sequel to the 95 movie, that's the stuff that I saw when I was a child and thought, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same kind of thing that they did in that movie where just a villain would show up out of nowhere, no introduction, no setup, and there'd be a fight scene, and then that character would be wiped off the board. Okay, that's it. Goro. Goro is probably like the big, impressive character of the first Mortal Kombat, like, roster of characters, and he was a big deal in the 95 movie. This movie, he's introduced out of nowhere, then there's a fight scene with him, and he's taken care of. There's not even an establishment of how dangerous he is. He's just like a mook. He's just some random guy, a random CGI monster that shows up, and he's taken care of.
Yeah.
Whereas, you've got so many characters that, if you're a fan, like, there's characters that I know of because I do know the games. Like, while I'm not huge deep into the lore of the games, I know of these characters because I played the games. But watching this as a movie, these characters are just popping up, and there's no introduction to them. Kung Lao shows up. He's this guy with a razor blade hat, and he just shows up out of nowhere, like, oh, haha, you're here, my cousin Kung. Now let's fight these guys. What? That's what I'm saying. Why there were decisions made with the story which actually, really brought the story to a grinding halt. As far as, the characters need to practice and develop their powers and stuff like that. And it's like they made, rather than just making the movie just a series of fight scenes, it's like they tried to do some movie things in there to try to have an actual structure to the film, but then at other times there's things that just don't work as a movie at all, like having too many characters, or just there's so many things that are just wrong with it from a script perspective. It's like I'm wondering how much trouble maybe this movie had during COVID. It is the first movie I've ever seen that had a credit at the end saying about COVID compliance people or whatever. So
yeah,
I don't know, how many issues this movie might have had with the production being shut down.
They did lose cast. I know from announcements that were coming through when this film was in pre-production. They lost Vin Diesel and they lost Joel Edgerton. I'm guessing only because Joel Edgerton wanted to stay in America with the whole COVID thing, because he's producing a new television series over there, so probably needed to be there for that. So I always start to worry when I hear that they're losing cast, people like that, especially big names, because it kind of feels like they've replaced them with smaller names. I've been racking my brain trying to think which role Vin Diesel would have been playing, and the only role I can think of is Jax.
But even then, that would have been a whitewashing of the character, because
Jax
is black.
Yeah.
Vin Diesel isn't, so yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of really weird. And then like I said, I'm pretty sure Joel Edgerton was supposed to play Kano. And they've gone with Josh Lawson because he's an Australian-based actor who has got cred overseas because he's done a few roles in America. But yeah, it really feels like, I'm like you, I don't want to feel like I'm having a go at someone, but when you're doing a great big mega blockbuster film like this, is that the right time to put a debut director in charge of it? We've got some amazing director, even if they had to go with an Australian director because of COVID, we've got some amazing directors in this country that know how to handle action films, like people like Shayna Bess spring to mind. We've got some, even some amazing Australian horror directors that could have been in charge of this. And I still don't know why James Wan wasn't directing. I know for years and years I've read that James Wan has been wanting to make a Mortal Kombat movie, so it feels kind of weird that his credit is producer.
For the longest time, I thought he was director, and then suddenly, oh wait, just producer. It was weird.
I was expecting to see written and directed by James Wan. This is a guy that has made a Fast and Furious movie. He made Aquaman. He's perfect for the job, and apparently loves the game, so it would have been ideal to have written the script. But just, I don't know, it feels almost like this film's resulted in kind of a mess because of everything that's happened.
Yeah, the storyline of Cole being descended from Scorpion, and there being a birthmark on him, which specifies that he's a chosen fighter, and those kind of things. There's some things I kind of liked. It's interesting that certain fighters are marked as being special, and it's a way that they're able to perform these impossible magic fighting moves. But I liked certain things about the story, the way that they kind of tried to make it work as a movie. But to be honest, a lot of that, the movie could have just been 2 hours of fight scenes based around a tournament plot, and instead it grinds to a halt in the middle. it seems like the majority of the fight scenes, which is really what we're looking for in a movie like this, are crammed together all at the same time, where it's cutting between multiple different fights at once.
Yeah.
Like everybody everybody knows that movies like this are made with sequels in mind, but this is a series about a supernatural fighting tournament where the actual tournament isn't even going to happen unless there's a sequel.
Yeah.
As this movie, it acts more as a prologue to the tournament than the actual Mortal Kombat. You know, like, so I'm conflicted about how I feel about that, because, like, on one hand, I like that the movie didn't pull a Green Lantern and cram everything into the one film and have nowhere to go from there. But, like, on the other hand, all this had to be was a simple martial arts tournament movie with well-shot fight scenes spread throughout. That's all it had to be. What did you think of the way that it's a Mortal Kombat movie where they don't actually have the Mortal Kombat tournament in it? Because that's something I didn't really like that.
Yeah, I guess if they'd kind of made it known from the start that there was going to be a trilogy or something like that, that could have worked. Or if they'd wanted to make it known that this was an Origins film, then that could have worked as well. But yeah, they didn't really leave themselves much room, and like that's what another thing they could have done is if they didn't have Cole, like they could have almost made it that this big tournament is coming up. Jax is getting ready for it. Sonya's helping him. Suddenly they've got to take this loser Kano with them because he's the only other guy that they've found with a mark, kind of thing. That could have worked, and you could have still had that Sub-Zero attack early on, like. That's the other side's way of cheating, kind of thing, and I think that kind of would have worked. Like, but yeah, I don't know. Like, it doesn't worry me that so much that the tournament wasn't there. I think if you were always planning on making a trilogy, I guess it's kind of like with Harry Potter, how you have that story where Harry's doing all that training, and you know one day he's going to have to face Voldemort. Like you know that it's going to happen at some stage. Like, I guess that in a way is Harry's tournament. Like, you know that coming
in the future.
Yeah, like, and that can still work in a film. Like, I don't think we ever really felt like the Harry Potter films didn't have suspense in there because we didn't have the battle with Voldemort straight away, kind of thing. It could have worked. I just think that this, like, by the end of this movie, I felt all the suspense was gone out of it. Like, you kind of had this lead up to what was going to be this epic battle, and then all of a sudden, characters are going off everywhere, and it almost felt like, I don't want to spoil what happens, but bringing a character back in, kind of thing, like, oh wow, yeah, that character's here and now got even more power. It felt like a really, really lazy way of writing, kind of thing. Like it felt like a writer was sitting there going, look, I really don't know how I'm going to make Cole win this fight. So, like, it almost felt like the writer was cheating in the same way as what the Outer World people were cheating in the film. So, yeah, it just felt like a mess towards the end.
Yeah, like, as you say, like, the opening part really is the best part about it, but I don't know what the whole Sub-Zero / Scorpion rivalry between warring clans, what's going on there? I think that's something from the last couple of games, like that whole, the clans that the Sub-Zero is from and the clans that Scorpion is from and that they're fighting together. I think that's something that was kind of introduced very recently as far as the games go. Yeah. But with one side speaking Chinese, the other side speaking Japanese, and with subtitles, and Cole being a descendant of the Haramumi clan or something. Like, the movie doesn't need this messy backstory for just two characters, like just two of the many characters that are in this movie, and it doesn't even really stick to it. Like, it doesn't explain what the hell's going on there. It keeps saying, oh, for the Haramumi clan or whatever. It's like, okay, what's going on there? what is that about? Like,
Yeah.
at one point, like, Bi-Han is Bi-Han, and then you see him a few hundred years later, and now he's wearing his costume, and he's calling himself Sub-Zero. And
Yeah.
then his rival suddenly calls himself Scorpion in the same way. It's like, it's just, it was needlessly complex, but it wasn't any smarter than it could have been.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It really feels like this is a movie that's made for fans of the game, because, yeah, I was like that. Like, oh, so what happened to this guy? Why has he suddenly got all these extra powers, like, with and becoming Sub-Zero? Like, it almost felt like if you were going to tell this story in such a complex way, that you need to make it a television series like The Witcher or something like that, where you can actually get to see the characters develop and become that. Because the more I was thinking about it, like, probably my favorite movie of all time based on a video game is Resident Evil. Because you never feel when you're watching that movie that you're dumb because you haven't played the game. Whereas I felt that a lot during this film. I felt like, because I haven't played the game, I don't know what this character is. Like, even the whole setup of like the worlds and everything like that, it's kind of
Netherworld,
it's
stuff.
kind of just thrown at you really, really quickly, and there's no real explanation. It's like, has Earth lost these fights before, like, to other realms? Like, I know they keep on saying that the Outer World has won the last 9 fights or something against Earth, and it's like, well, but what does that mean exactly? Like, it doesn't really throw anything in there. Like, who are these past people that lost? Like, were they like Cole? Were they out of their depth, or were they like heroes? Like, there's a big difference if you find out that one of the people that that was defeated was someone that was like Thor or something, that was like super strong. Because then you think, oh, Cole hasn't got a shot, kind of thing. But yeah, it was like, all I kept on thinking when I was watching that was how well they set that up in Shazam. Again, another movie that's like got a comedy element to it, but it's so much better than Mortal Kombat. And again, like, even talking about Thunder Force, in Thunder Force you've got these mutants, and it's set up in the first 5 minutes exactly what these mutants are. They're attacking Earth, and they kill people. They killed Octavia Spencer's parents. It's so well set up, and it's like, I know the world of Thunder Force within 5 minutes, but I've sat there for nearly 2 hours and watched Mortal Kombat, and I'm still got questions about the world that they live in.
Yeah, like, it doesn't need to be a brilliant... Because that's the thing I keep hearing people, what do you expect from a video game movie? It's like, well, at least I want to know what the hell's going on. You know, like, and especially it being a movie version of this game, you shouldn't need to know who these characters are from playing the game to go into the movie. You know, like, it's weird. Like, it's a pity because the 95 Mortal Kombat movie, like, I do have such a soft spot for it. I mean, the thing that this movie has, I guess, that a lot of people are looking forward to it instead of the original 1995 movie, was the gore and the violence and the harder R rating. And, like, it does have that, I guess, if that's all the people are looking for. But, like, I mean, that 95 movie, it wasn't an amazing film, but it had standout characters and locations, and it told, like, a basic fighting tournament story. You understood what was going on in it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think comparing them, one of the biggest things that I think this movie kind of fails at is with the soundtrack. Like, the music, like, none of the music in this movie held a candle to anything from the original. Like, the original theme song from the first movie, it's still so beloved, like, 25 years later, that they had to do a remix of it in the end credits of this film and include it in the trailers.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in this movie that really would stand the test of time like that other one did.
Yeah, exactly. And, yeah.
Like, I guess as cheesy and as toned down as the original movie was, the trade-off was it was an entertaining film. And, like, people still look back at it fondly. Like, it's kind of like Die Hard 5 compared to Die Hard 4.
Yeah.
Where it's like, having violence and swearing in the movie isn't enough to make it better, even if like some fans think that it is.
Yeah, but you know what? I find that happens a lot with soundtracks these days. Like, I'm someone who in the past, like, growing up in the 90s and the 2000s, I probably bought like 20, 30 soundtracks a year. Like, I've got a huge soundtrack collection, but in the last couple of years, I haven't. And, like, I didn't realize until the other day when I saw the new Irvin Welsh movie, Creation Stories, how long it had been since I bought a soundtrack. Like, most films these days bring their soundtracks out and they're forgettable. But you then think back to, like, movies, like, even movies, like, that are in this genre, like, Kiss of the Dragon, Cradle to the Grave, they had amazing soundtracks. Like, they had the kind of soundtracks that you walk out of the cinema and you went straight to JB and bought the soundtrack. And that doesn't happen anymore. Like, yeah, Creation Stories was the first film for me in ages where I walked out of the cinema and instantly downloaded it off Spotify. Like, it seems these days that people have lost that knack of doing great soundtracks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's not. I'm trying to think what the last soundtrack I actually bought was. Like maybe score stuff from like Christopher Nolan movies or something. But that's.
But you think you think of the Godzilla movie from 1995, and you had like Green Day, you had Brian May, you had amazing people on the soundtrack, and then you listen to the new Godzilla soundtrack, and it's just like generic rap and generic dance music that you don't even know who's singing.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's good. I know. Yeah, it used to be a big deal. Like, who's now it's a big deal when the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which are more just compilation soundtracks. It's they don't really have new music, like with new artists.
Yeah,
they just have. I think the last one that I saw that was really trying to sell itself like that, I guess in the same kind of 90s way, was. Oddly enough, the Charlie's Angels movie from a couple of years back.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the last ones. That then, none of that music really stood out. So.
No. Well, I guess we should wrap up. But what are you going to give this one out of 5?
I'm going to give this 2.5 out of 5. I know I really spent a lot of time crapping on it. I think it's just that because. A lot of people are not expecting very much from a movie like this. I'll be a little bit more generous with it. They just want to see some violence. They just want to see some video game characters punching each other. So I'll give it 2.5 out of 5. I think it could have been a lot better than it was, and it's a pity that I should be looking forward to a sequel to this because I enjoyed this movie so much. Instead, I find myself looking forward to a potential sequel because thinking of all the things that they could fix that went wrong with this one. So, 2.5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I'm giving it 2.5 out of 5 as well. I think I really wish that the rest of this movie was like the first 10 minutes, and then I would have absolutely loved it. But instead, to me, it just fell away and become like some of the generic DC movies that we see these days. I think not having James Wan as a director and a screenwriter for the film was the biggest mistake that they made. But I just felt by the end of this movie that it was an absolute mess, and I haven't felt that way about a film for a long, long time. So, so I guess that's it for this episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. We both gave Mortal Kombat 2.5 stars, and we hope it gets better in future. But for now, I've been Dave G.
And I've been Kyle.
And we'll be back very, very soon with another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy.